Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. I am Boice, your podcasting host. Thank you for listening to this episode. For the first-time listener, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from all different genres and backgrounds, both established and emerging. And on this new episode, I had the great pleasure of speaking to saxophonist Cochemea, best known for playing in the Dap-Kings, as in Sharon Jones and the Dap-Kings, the incredible Sharon Jones, who passed away in 2016. He has a new album out now on Daptone Records called All My Relations. Spoke to him at the Daptone office in Brooklyn on a very snowy winter day. Great conversation. We talked about his heritage, first instruments as a child, the process of finding his voice as a musician. We talked about how he became a Dap-King, also what it was like working with Sharon Jones and what he learned from her. And, of course, we talked about the new album, All My Relations, the concept behind it with Gabe Roth, the making of it. We talked about the difference between being a solo artist and being in a horn section. After this great conversation, you will hear a track from All My Relations called Al-Mutasim, one of my favorites from the album. And we kick off this conversation talking about the meaning of his name. Here it is, without further ado, my interview with Cochemea. Enjoy. So that means they who were killed asleep, is that
They were all killed asleep.
What is that from? What does that mean? What?
It's a Yaqui name.
Mm-hmm. And how did your parents named you that?
They had a book called Yaqui Myths and Legends, and they got the name out of the book.
Oh, okay. So what does that mean when you get given that name as a child?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Well, I can only speak on what it means to me, my experience, but it definitely instilled me with a certain knowledge of my ancestors and my roots. But it still was a bit abstract growing up. My father died really early, so it in a sense, I had the sort of, the door was cracked open, but I didn't go fully in.
Okay.
So I couldn't forget that I was Native, but I still existed in this, United States. So, but as I got older, I got more curious. And I still sort of, how shall I say, code switched.
Okay.
And kind of didn't fully embrace my name. I just kind of kept it over to the side there. People didn't know how to say it. I didn't even really fully understand it. But as I got older, I got, something, it's like it's something I could never really run away from. So I became reunited, as fate would have it, with my dad's side of the family later in life. And they found me. My cousin was doing a family tree tracing our native roots.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and my father passed away so long ago, and I had been, estranged from the family. Not for any malice, it's just the way it happened. It just split, and it was almost like I was this long-lost discovery. And my father was a very celebrated figure in the family.
Okay.
He was just a very gifted artist. He played guitar, jazz guitar, boleros, flamencos, norteños. He was a sculptor, prolific sculptor. I mean, his pieces are just scattered everywhere. He also, after meeting my cousins, he instilled he passed down kind of the native sensibilities and some of the ways of our ancestors to the other side of to my cousins, and that kind of spread out from there. So when I met my cousins, I mean, they didn't even know how to say my name. You know? And some of them still don't. You know, I remember my uncle telling me the story about when they said, What are you gonna name him, Johnny? What are you gonna name him? He's like, I'm gonna name him Cochemea. They're like, I don't think the family can say that, Johnny.
We're going to have to learn it.
And he was just like, that's their problem. That's the way he looked at it. So, so it's been a journey, you know, and I think it kind of has culminated with this record. Mm-hmm. In fact, my first record, I had toyed with putting it out under a pseudonym.
Okay.
You know, it's like, well, maybe this will just be easier for everybody. But when it came down to it, I felt so connected with the music that I felt it just didn't totally feel like right for one reason or another. So I released my first record under my whole name, and this record, we weren't even sure how we were going to release it. It could have been a band name, or it could have been just some other name, or the pseudonym. But after kind of talking about it and feeling it out and everything, we just decided to do it. And I had actually, years ago, thought about just putting something out under just my first name. So it was, and then I kind of forgotten about that when this record came along. Then I was like, oh, I should revisit that idea. And then Gabe and I just kind of talked about it, and it just became that.
Okay. So how old were you when you reconnected with your father's family?
I was about 25.
Okay.
So I already kind of lived a life a bit, you know. But everything changed because I got very close with some people. Some of my first cousins, we got really close immediately. Okay. They were very close to my dad.
Yeah. Okay. So and that was when you like reconnected, or maybe even not reconnect, for the first time getting with that side of your culture. Yeah.
Okay. My mom had been involved in the Native community. She worked in the Native American Health Center in San Diego, and I'd gone to powwows and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I think I felt a deeper connection. Okay. And it was kind of a full circle thing, because even though I was separated from my father and he died before I got to really know him, what he passed on to my cousins and came full circle to me. So that was it was a sort of you might say a healing process. Okay.
Did you feel like you had been missing out?
Yeah, I did, in a way, you know. I think, but my mom did what she had to do. So, but there was that feeling. But I feel like any of those feelings got kind of healed when I met my family. Okay, you know.
Yeah.
Because that was the way it was supposed to happen. Yeah. And any missing out, I felt like, well, now it's coming back to me.
Okay. So when did you start? The sax was the first instrument?
Drums.
Okay. How old were you when you started playing drums?
Second grade.
Okay. And what made you want to play drums?
I wanted to be in a rock and roll band.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Right? And so to me, the drums were it. Okay. And I guess I felt the rhythm early on. I grew up around a lot of music. My mom had a very eclectic taste in music. She liked everything from Alice Coltrane to the Beatles to Aretha Franklin, Jimmy Reed, and then lots of jazz. Yeah. But as with the drums, I really just wanted a drum set. I wanted to rock out, but that wasn't going to happen. So I just made the switch. I really fell in love with the saxophone. It looked like just such a beauty to behold, you know, and a thing to tame in a way, you know, just all these keys and intricate work. And so I knew I had to play it. Yeah.
How old were you when you started playing sax?
I was about 10 or 11.
Okay. And then you were self-taught, right?
No, in a way, but I was in school band, but I never really had. A lot of the teachers I had were sort of, I don't want to say weekend warriors because they were music teachers, but I didn't feel like they had a passion for music. You know, like both my junior high and high school teachers went on to do other things, you know, And I had reached a point in high school where the band teacher actually said, I can't teach you anything anymore. You need to go elsewhere.
Okay.
So I actually quit band in high school and got a private teacher and ended up at Berklee College of Music. And then there was a good foundational, they gave me a foundation because I didn't really get taught any of the foundations of theory or anything like that in high school. I basically, all through that time, taught myself how to play, listening to records and transcribing stuff and playing Charlie Parker solos and memorizing them. So that's how I kind of learned phrasing and kind of the swing and just the feel of the music. So by the time I got to college, I could play this stuff, but I had no one kind of guiding me. So I kind of had my education has been kind of pieced together. Yeah. And so I after a few semesters at Berklee, I left and just started playing in bands. And that was another learning experience, just kind of doing it, playing in all different kinds of bands, playing in rock bands and some Latin bands and some soul and funk and kind of organ jazz, and eventually I got on tour, and that was one of the biggest learning experiences of all. The tour was just playing music, just playing improvised music every night, and it was with this dear friend of mine, Robert Walter. He had a band called the Great All Stars. They actually still play, but he formed his own band, and it was a quintet with congas, drums, bass, organ, and saxophone, and so we toured. I mean, at its peak, we toured around for about 6 years. Some years were like 150, 200 dates a year. Oh, really? Okay. So we were on the road a lot. So I was able to really develop my voice. And he was the kind of leader that didn't really tell me anything, how to play or anything. He just let me be me, and he turned me on to all sorts of different music. So I was able to really find my voice. And just, I mean, and to play with people, in front of people. That was a huge learning experience.
How did you know when you had found your voice?
I think it was maybe during that time. But I feel like my voice is constantly evolving. Like I don't feel like I have the same voice now that I did then at all. I mean, it's something that you build on, but it's also something that seems to evolve and ebb and flow. Because I think about myself now and myself then, and I feel it's somewhat different, somewhat the same, but I've just lived such a life now, so I'm just trying to move it forward and not think too much about that. So I think there was a certain time then where I felt like in fact, I remember a moment. It was at a recording session, and something changed with the way I was playing. I feel like that's how I want to sound, you know. And then when that band quit, I sort of became more of an ensemble player. That's how I fell into the Daptone world and started playing with Sharon Jones and Antibalas and the Budos band some and the Fela thing. And I really started to transition from being just a soloist to playing in a horn section, which is a completely different discipline, but but I learned a lot, and so because there's a lot of soloists that can't go back and forth because it's a certain kind of way to be when you're in a section. There's a different type of listening, I think, and there's a blend with the other players, and there's a synergy that happens that isn't about you; it's about a bigger thing.
How long does it take, and what are the things that separate from soloing, improvising, and then playing with an ensemble?
Well, it all involves listening. I just think there's a different function. Like with the soloist, a lot of times you with what you play, you can lead the group, but then a lot of times it's this back and forth, you know, and I like to kind of drop little things, have the band respond, and then me respond to them, and then have it be this conversation. With being in a horn section, there is little bits of that, but it's in a much more microscopic level. Like with the Dap-Kings, for instance, within our section, we were feeding off Sharon's energy.
Okay.
So we're supporting her.
Yeah.
And the band is one sound. And I guess you could say that about improvising. It's one sound. It's just moving in a different way a little bit. But when we're in the section, there's little things that Dave would do on the trumpet and then I would do. And then we would have this, or I'd be listening to Gabe on the bass and we'd be playing off each other. There's these little things happening, but it's all serving this one whole thing and supporting Sharon. And so... or in Antibalas, there's also a blend that happens. I think of it as just like all these little things making up one big sound.
Okay. Do you how do you maintain your individuality in an ensemble?
In a section?
Yeah.
I think you have to be kind of egoless, you know, in a way, because you're supporting at least with the Dax, we're supporting Sharon. So and we're feeding off her energy. Okay. And then in turn, she feeds off our energy, you know, so it's a symbiotic relationship. Okay. I think, so in a sense, I didn't think of myself necessarily as an individual. You know, like if I'm playing whether I'm playing the baritone or the tenor, each instrument serves its own function. Okay. So the baritone to me is half horn section, half in the rhythm section. So I feel like I'm playing a role, let's say. Yeah. You know, but, and I'm doing that role to the best of my ability and I'm doing it how I do it. Okay. But I'm taking all my influences and all the things I've listened to and kind of focusing that into one energy to serve the band. Okay.
And what do you think you bring to the band?
To the Dap-Kings?
Yeah, your sound.
I think with the baritone, I just really embraced that role. Maybe it's because I started out on drums, but and I also love just the low end. Yeah. So I think I just brought this sort of like and since I had all this background with soul music and to some degree before, although I learned so much more with the band, I was able to kind of take all these things that I learned before and kind of shape them into the role of the baritone, you know. And since I love the bass, I've always loved the bass, and a lot of times when I write songs, they come from a bass line. It felt natural to be in that role, so I was able to kind of channel that, and then hearing Gabe and the way he plays, and being able to feed off him. I think I just brought a certain sensibility to it.
How did you get connected to Daptone and the Dap-Kings?
It was. Let's see. About 2005, they were supporting the Naturally record, and Neil, the tenor player, him and his wife were having their first child, so he needed to take some time off, and also he's half owner of the label, so there was just a lot going on. So for him to be on the road was, I think, a little too demanding. So they wanted to have a sub, and they went through all of these auditions, apparently, but no one quite fit the bill. So somehow my name got thrown into the mix, and through a mutual friend. And I'd already known Neil actually for some time, but for some reason, I think my name got thrown in by another mutual friend of ours. Anyway, I came down. I had never played a baritone in my life. I was strictly an alto player at that point. And I had never really been in a horn section either. But so it was like I just kind of got this call last minute. They were on their way back from a tour. And Ian Henderson Smith, who was the baritone player at the time, called me and he said, hey, just would you be into, you know, going out, you know, doing a little subbing. And I was at that point, Robert's band had just broken up. I didn't have a band. I was just kind of freelancing.
Yeah, like I can't say no. Right?
Yeah, I was like, that would be great, actually. So yeah, it was a very quick last minute thing. I just showed up. And they said, you're gonna, and I was kind of afraid to tell them I never played baritone. So I kind of shyly was like, I don't have one. I don't. And they were like, well, that's all right. And there was this broken baritone just literally laying in the corner. And they're like, just play this. And I said, okay. And I just picked it up, and they just started kind of teaching me a couple things. I started playing along, and they're like, all right, now step. And I started stepping, and I had a little bit of rhythm. So, and then next thing I knew, I was out on the road with them for a month, and then it just kind of rolled along from there.
Okay. So at what point it became permanent?
2009.
Okay. And was there like a big, like, what's the transition you have to make between alto and baritone?
Well, they're in the same key, just one's an octave lower. But they're just a totally different function.
Yeah.
You know, luckily there's no transposition that needs to happen, but it's just I just had to flip my mind in terms of what it does with the band.
Okay. And what the experience been like, the touring, making albums and all that?
With the band?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I feel really lucky that I've been able to have this experience with them, with the family, with Sharon. I'm just extremely grateful.
Yeah. And like, what was it like working with her?
She's one of a kind, man. Yeah, she's just one of a kind. I've never known anyone like her. Just her spirit and just what she would do on stage was just incredible. Yeah. You know, like I think she was just really one of the greats of our times. Just the energy that she could get to such a level, and when her energy and the band and matched and our energy would meet, and just the way it would elevate, as I've never felt anything like that.
There's a beautiful interview she did with Terry Gross. And it was just like so inspiring that you know, she was still going out on stage and everything
after she
was sick. Yeah,
that gave her life, man. She lived for that. I mean, to get in front of her fans, to sing, that's what she was about.
Yeah. Okay. And how does that affect you, like being around someone like that, with that energy?
You know, it's like anytime I'm like have complain or think about, it just kind of, I think about Sharon and just her strength and her perseverance and her spirit, and it's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of feel like I look to her a little bit for guidance sometimes when I'm feeling this like, oh, I got this mountain to climb or whatever it is, or, it's just like, come on, this, look at what she did, in the state that she was in and the strength that she I mean, I really feel like in some ways she got stronger. Her voice actually, she did things with her voice I hadn't heard her do while she was, at kind of, when she was really sick. She pulled some things out that were really amazing. So I get inspired by that.
That's great. Yeah. So you you start conceiving All My Relations.
We were on the road, and I'd been talking to Gabe and Neil, just kind of loose, oh, we should do a record. But, it was, I hadn't really, I was making stuff in my studio, and, but from how I remember it, we were just in the back of the tour bus. We would just hang out back there and listen to records. And I just remember Gabe saying, just looking at me and going, we should make a record. And I was like, yeah, we should. Let's do it. Well, what do you think? And we just started kicking around ideas. And he was saying, we should have like and I always liked drums, let's do a drum record. We were listening to this record by Sabu Martinez called Afro Temple. It's basically just, he's a percussion player, and it was basically all this percussion and a horn. There was no real other information really, but it was all on the drums, and the drums we're doing there's so much melody there. So we kept talking about this idea, why don't we do something with the melody is in the drums? And we know all these amazing percussion players in New York, and so we just, we start with that idea. Then we were like, why don't we just, it's going to be in the casting. Let's just get the right crew together. Let's just book one day, no material, improvise, and just see what happens. Okay. So we went with that. And then we just cast it. And it was all like we wanted people who were going to bring just this sort of just good energy, you know, and everyone knew each other, and everyone had played together in some kind of iteration over the years. So when everyone got in the room, it was just, you could just feel the love. It was just really beautiful. And it just kind of rolled along from there.
Were you giving, like, okay, here's a song, were you giving them any kind of, like, template or idea what to start with?
Later.
Okay.
But because we did 2 sessions. The first one was very loose. I kind of had these, they were just loose concepts. It wasn't even any, the whole point was to not bring anything. And just to see what everyone would come up with. So the drums would start playing. As soon as the drummer started playing, I just felt something special was going to happen. But they would start playing. I would play a melody. I'd improvise something. And then as soon as we felt like we had something, we would just kind of arrange it. And Gabe was kind of the master producer of everything. And we would all come up with these parts. Once we felt like we had an arrangement, we would cut it. And then when we were satisfied with it, we'd move on to the next thing. Okay. So that went on for about almost 24 hours solid, till the end where it was just like maybe like 3 people left standing. People started peeling off as the night went on. But there was a certain kind of flow we got into, and everyone sort of brought something, like Asatoma, the Sanskrit prayer, Giancarlo brought. Okay. You know, he wrote it out for everyone, and we did this chant, which is a prayer. And All My Relations, you know, Wayne had this melody that he had going on, and so I kind of took it and adapted it to this kind of native feel, and then the drummers put their thing on it, and the Al-Mutasim, Gabe had a gimbri from Morocco that his dad brought him, and he has North African Sephardic heritage, so we did this Ganawa feeling song. Mescalero had a Mexican Wapango rhythm that I brought in. I'm just fascinated with that rhythm, and it reminds me of my ancestors. So it just kind of, all these things just kind of work together, and how they, and the concept of All My Relations, when we were doing that song, there was this chant that Wayne had. And Gabe said, why don't you do something about the wall? So it's like, ain't gonna build no wall. Ain't gonna build no wall. And then we all just started singing, ain't gonna, over and over and over again. And like a mantra, like a meditation. And then I started playing a little bit. And at the end, I was like, why don't we say all my relations, like you end a prayer, you know, all my relations, because I you know, it's like, why have a wall? We're all related, you know, and that became for me just sort of the centerpiece of the album, and the concept of what we were trying to do going in, which was to make healing music, you know, to call attention to our interconnectedness rather than our separateness. And then we did another session where, you know, we listened to everything, took a little time, and I wanted to record a few more songs. So I went back upstate where I live in Woodstock, and I wrote a few tunes, and I brought those in, and then we recorded those and arranged them. And Gabe produced Gabe produced the whole session. And
this is Gabe Roth?
Gabe Roth. Okay. Yep. And we really collaborated a lot on this record. I mean, we worked very closely together, which was a great experience.
Did you at least know prior to the sessions that you wanted to have these different sounds of different cultures melding together? Did you have that?
I think I did on some level. You know, I kind of went in with just the attitude of discovery and just seeing what's going to happen. But I also didn't want it to be so specific. Like, here's a Latin song, here's a whatever. You know, I wanted it to just be inspired by things. Like Mescalero, for instance, has a Wapango rhythm, but it's not exact. You know, so I wanted more to be inspired, but to be its own thing.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how intentional this was, but it feels very spiritual, the album. Mm-hmm. Like it touches you in a way. Was that intentional, or is that just like your life?
Well, I think it was what was happening, you know, because when we made the music, we were coming from that place. Yeah. And everyone, we were coming from a place of spirit and bringing God into the room. Yeah. So I'm glad that you feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that, like, the first impression, like, listening to it. You can feel that connection. How was it, did you know it was going to be different from your first album?
Well, the first album was made entirely differently. That was just made through, I made it in my home studio, which changed over the years. So it was made in multiple locations in multiple cities, just kind of guerrilla style overdubs here on my laptop. I overdubbed a lot of instruments, got a lot of friends. So just, you know, there's a lot of different musicians on there too. And it was pieced together. This one was done in 2 sessions in the studio here at Daptone. It was just a completely different process, you know, which I really embrace because I don't want every record to be exactly the same. Yeah. You know, I like that each one has its own place and time and process.
Okay. And what do you have? What's coming up for the year? The album comes out February 22nd.
Yeah, album comes out soon, next week. And I'm actually hitting the road. I'm going on tour supporting Antibalas. Okay. Which I'm really excited about. They're having their 20th year anniversary, and they've been family for so long that it feels like it's, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of their members too. They're going to be playing with me, so it just feels like a family affair.
How does it feel like being the band leader?
It feels well. I haven't been the band leader for this band yet. In the studio, I was to a degree maybe on the second session where I brought in tunes, but it was really a group effort. You know, everyone brought something. So I didn't necessarily, I felt like in a way I directed certain things, but Gabe directed a lot and produced a lot, and everyone brought something. So maybe I was the conduit to bring everyone together. But now, next week will be the first time we actually play this music live. So, it's different in the sense that you're directing the thing, you know, and people look to you for the direction of it, which is a totally different mindset than being part of the band or being in the section, you know. So there's multiple things that can kind of creep into the mind.
What?
Well, like you know, okay, what's the next song, or am I going over time, or just these sort of, you know, logistical things, you know, that so it takes a different kind of focus. And then also on top of it, just playing, you know, because I want to be completely focused when I'm just playing and just be able to let the spirit come in, you know, without all these little thoughts. So it's there's a certain amount of compartmentalizing that has to go on, as opposed to just if I'm playing the baritone, I'm just playing that, and then when it's over, it's over. So, but I'm really looking forward to it. You know, it's going to be not like the record, you know. It'll be a different people. A couple of the same people, but some different folks playing the music. So I just want to let the music dictate what happens.
Have you started rehearsals yet for?
No, this week we're going to start rehearsing.
Okay. Yeah. How many people are we starting off with?
This one we're going to have 6 people. Okay. And the record had 10. Yeah. So it'll be pared down, but I think it's going to be a modular setup, you know, so I'm trying to not be too precious about the music and just let it, like I said, kind of let it do what it's going to do.
Instead of trying to duplicate with the album. Okay.
Yeah.
And best place for people to keep up with you online, get the album?
So they can get the album at daptonerecords.com. They can pre-order still. And then I have, Facebook page and Instagram that I'm keeping pretty current. That's probably the best way.
Okay.
And people can always message me if they want, and the tour starts next Tuesday in LA at Zebulon for 2 nights, and then it heads up the West Coast.
Okay.
Till March 5th.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks,
it was a
boys.
pleasure, man.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was Al-Mutasim from my guest Cochemea's new wonderful album, All My Relations, out now on Daptone Records. You can also get it on vinyl. His name is spelled Cochemea, so you can find him online very easily. I'm online at talkmusictalk.com for more podcast information and to stream every single episode. You can also find me on Instagram at This Is Boice, so please follow me there. Some call to actions for you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it on social media, email it to a friend, or leave a 5-star rating and or review wherever you are listening, especially on iTunes, because it all helps to grow the TMT audience. You can also download the TMT app. It is free for iPhone and Android, and you can get it wherever you get your apps regularly, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. You can also find the podcast on SoundCloud, starting with episode 100, and that is going to be at soundcloud.com/This Is Boice. You can also find the music that I make. I have 2 albums out. You can hear the music and the podcast there. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.